Emma Walker told herself the drive back to Montana was only temporary. Yet her hands tightened on the steering wheel as the wide fields opened in front of her. Because some places remembered you even when you tried to forget them, and the Miller Ranch was one of those places, holding years of quiet memories she had buried beneath city lights and busy days in Seattle. The gate stood just as it always had, weathered but strong, and as she passed through it, the silence felt loud, pressing against the thoughts she had avoided since her uncle's passing. The man who had raised her when life first taught her loss. She parked near the old house, stepped out, and breathed in air that smelled of grass and sun, feeling both comforted and unsettled. Because returning meant facing choices she had delayed for too long. She was there to settle papers, make clean decisions, and leave again. Yet the ranch did not feel like something that could be handled quickly or neatly. As she walked toward the barn, her boots crunching on gravel, she noticed movement near the fence line, a man lifting his head from his work as if he had sensed her presence before seeing her. He was tall, steady, dressed simply, his sleeves rolled up, hands worn from labor. And when their eyes met, Emma felt a pause she could not explain. As though the moment asked her to slow down, even when she didn't want to. He greeted her with a calm voice, introduced himself as Jack, and spoke her name with a familiarity that surprised her, explaining he had worked the ranch for years and had known her uncle well. And in that brief exchange, Emma sensed a quiet respect in him, not curiosity or judgment, just understanding. She followed him as he showed her around, listening as he spoke about the land, the cattle, and the routines, his words simple but full of care. And she realized he wasn't just doing a job, he was protecting something that mattered, the ranch, unfolded before her through his explanations, each detail reminding her that this place was alive, shaped by people who stayed even when staying was hard. Emma tried to keep her distance emotionally, telling herself she was only passing through. Yet she noticed the way Jack gave her space without pulling away. How he watched the sky before the weather shifted, how he spoke of her uncle with quiet gratitude rather than sadness. As the day moved on, she felt a strange mix of peace and tension. Because being there felt right in a way she had not felt in years, and that scared her more than the idea of leaving. In the afternoon light, as they stood near the house, Jack mentioned that the ranch had weathered many changes, fires, droughts, and years when people thought it should be sold, but it had endured because someone always believed it was worth fighting for, and those words settled deeply in Emma's chest even though she did not respond. She told herself not to read meaning into simple conversation. Yet she could not ignore the way her heartbeat shifted whenever he met her eyes. As evening approached, the sky softened, and Emma stood alone on the porch for a moment, realizing how tired she was, not just from travel but from years of pushing forward without looking back. And for the first time she allowed herself to feel the weight of her grief and the uncertainty ahead. Jack passed by again, offering to help with anything she needed. His tone steady, his presence grounding, and she thanked him, watching as he walked away, feeling an unexpected pull she could not name. That night, as she sat inside the quiet house surrounded by old photographs and shadows of the past, Emma understood that coming back had already changed something inside her. Because the ranch was not just a property to sell, and Jack was not just a ranch hand, and the stillness she felt was not empty but waiting. She lay awake listening to the distant sounds of the land, knowing that this was only the beginning. And though she did not yet know what she would choose, one truth had become clear in a single day. Her heart had noticed something her mind was not ready to face. And the return she believed would be simple had already begun to test her resolve. Asterisk. The days on the ranch began to move faster than Emma expected, each morning starting with clear skies and purpose. And she found herself waking early, drawn outside by the quiet energy of the land and the steady rhythm of work that did not ask questions but offered calm in return. Jack was always already awake, moving through his tasks with focus. And though he never crowded her, his presence became part of her routine in a way that felt natural and grounding. He showed her how the ranch functioned beyond paperwork, explaining which fields needed care, how the animals were rotated, and why certain fences mattered more than others. And as he spoke, Emma noticed how deeply he understood the place, not just as land, but as something with memory and meaning. She followed him through long stretches of pasture, listening, asking questions, and slowly realizing how distant her city life had made her from moments that felt real and earned. They talked easily, not about big dreams or regrets at first, but about weather, seasons, and small choices that shaped daily life. And those simple conversations began to carry weight because they were honest and unguarded. In the afternoons, Emma worked through documents at the kitchen table, yet her focus often drifted toward the window where she could see Jack moving across the land, steady and patient, and she wondered when she had started caring so deeply about something she had planned to leave behind. Evenings brought cooler air and long shadows, and Jack often joined her on the porch, keeping a respectful distance while sharing stories about her uncle, moments of quiet kindness, lessons learned through years of work. And Emma listened closely, feeling parts of her past reconnect in ways she had not expected. She noticed how Jack spoke with care, never trying to impress, never pushing for attention. And that restraint made his presence stronger, not weaker, because it left room for her to choose how close to stand. One evening, clouds rolled in without warning, darkening the sky as they walked back from the fields, and rain began suddenly, forcing them to take shelter in the old barn, where the sound of rain on the roof filled the space and slowed time. Standing there, surrounded by familiar tools and the smell of hay, Emma felt the quiet intensity of the moment, not dramatic or rushed, but full of unspoken awareness. And when Jack met her eyes, his expression was thoughtful, as if he understood the pull they were both trying not to name. He spoke about the ranch again, about how some places hold people together without asking. And his words landed gently but firmly, because Emma knew he was also speaking about them, about how connection could form without permission. The storm passed, but the feeling remained. Following Emma back to the house where she spent the night restless, aware that she was changing in ways she had not planned. Over the next few days, she found herself laughing more easily, asking Jack to join her for meals and staying outside longer than necessary, because the quiet companionship made the days feel full rather than empty. She began to understand that her resistance was not about Jack alone, but about fear of choosing something uncertain after years of choosing safety and distance. Jack never pressured her, never asked what she planned to do, and that silence allowed her thoughts to surface clearly, forcing her to confront how much she valued his presence and the life unfolding around her. By the end of the week, Emma stood once more at the edge of the fields as the sun lowered, feeling both comforted and unsettled, because she knew she was no longer just visiting, and the attachment forming between her and the ranch, and between her and Jack, was becoming something she could not ignore. She told herself again that this was temporary, but the words felt less convincing each time, because her heart had already begun to settle into a rhythm she had forgotten, one shaped by open land, shared silences, and a man who made staying feel possible without ever asking her to promise anything at all. The offer arrived on a quiet morning, printed neatly on official paper. And the moment Emma held it in her hands, she felt the weight of every decision she had delayed pressing against her chest. Because this was the future she had planned for, clear and practical, yet suddenly harder to accept. The company wanted the land, promised development, and offered more money than she had expected, enough to close this chapter and return to the life she had built in Seattle. And as she read the numbers, she tried to convince herself that this was the right choice. She spent the day walking the ranch alone, replaying conversations, measuring memories against logic, and noticing details she had once overlooked: the worn steps, the open fields, the quiet strength of a place that had endured because someone always chose to stay. Jack sensed the shift before she spoke. His usual calm touched with concern when he found her near the fence. And without asking for details, he simply said that change had a way of announcing itself before words could, and Emma nodded, unsure how to explain the storm inside her. They worked side by side that afternoon in silence, the absence of easy conversation louder than any argument. And Emma realized how much she had come to rely on his steady presence, not his comfort alone, but as a reminder that life could be simple and honest. As the sun lowered, Jack finally spoke, telling her he knew she would not stay forever, that people like her had lives beyond the horizon. And though his voice remained even, the truth of his words settled heavily between them. Emma admitted she was leaving soon, that selling the ranch was the sensible path, and saying it aloud made the decision feel both real and painful. Because sense did not ease the loss she already felt. Jack listened without interruption, then told her he would never stand in the way of her future, but that what had grown between them was not imagined or small. And hearing him acknowledge it made her heart ache with both relief and fear. That night, Emma sat alone at the kitchen table, the contract spread before her, signing pen resting in her hand as memories of the past weeks rushed through her mind, mornings filled with purpose, evenings full of quiet connection and a feeling of belonging she had not felt in years. She stepped outside instead, letting the cool air clear her thoughts, and walked through the fields where shadows stretched long, asking herself when success had become more important than peace. Jack joined her there, keeping his distance, not asking her to choose, but sharing one simple truth: that some decisions followed logic and others followed the heart, and only she could know which path she would regret less. His words stayed with her long after he walked away, echoing through the quiet house as she packed her belongings slowly, each folded item feeling like a small goodbye. Morning came too soon, bringing with it the sound of engines and routine, yet nothing felt ordinary as Emma loaded her car, aware that leaving now would mean walking away not just from land, but from a version of herself she had just rediscovered. She paused at the edge of the driveway, contract unsigned in her bag, and looked back at the ranch one last time, uncertain whether courage meant staying or leaving, but knowing that whichever choice she made would change her life forever. Morning arrived crisp and quiet, with sunlight spilling across the fields, and Emma stood by her car, keys in hand, ready to leave the ranch that had already changed her in ways she hadn't expected, yet her chest felt heavy, filled with a mix of hesitation and longing because the choice to walk away suddenly seemed impossible. The house was still, the barn silent, and even the wind carried a gentle warning, as if the land itself was urging her to pause, to reconsider. And she realized that leaving now would not just close a chapter, it would erase the possibility of something she had not allowed herself to hope for. She walked slowly toward the fence line, memories of the past weeks flooding in, the long walks through golden fields, evenings spent watching sunsets with Jack nearby, conversations that were simple but meaningful, and moments of quiet connection that had grown into something neither of them could ignore. Each step made her heart beat faster, and she found herself thinking not of contracts or money, but of the way Jack had looked at her, steady and unjudging, and how his presence had made the ranch feel like more than a place, like home. Appeared while she was still lost in thought, carrying tools as usual, and when he looked up, surprise crossed his face before calm returned. As if he had expected this hesitation, but had not known how long it would take her to admit it. Emma walked toward him, words catching in her throat. But finally she said, "I couldn't go." Not yet, and the simplicity of that confession hung in the air, heavier than any formal decision could have been, because it held truth, fear, hope, and honesty all at once. Jack's eyes searched hers, not with judgment but with understanding, and for a moment neither of them spoke, letting the silence carry the weight of choices, desires, and possibilities that had been building over time. Then he nodded slowly, a small smile breaking through. not as a guarantee of the future, but as acknowledgement that what mattered was real and worth facing. And Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a relief and excitement mingling together, because she had stopped running from what she truly felt. They stood side by side, looking out over the land, feeling the wind brush past. And though they did not hold hands or speak more, the closeness between them had shifted, as if the space itself recognized the connection that had grown over shared mornings, conversations, and quiet understanding. Emma realized that staying did not mean she had all the answers, that the road ahead was uncertain, and yet the choice to remain in that moment, to be present with Jack and the ranch, was a choice of honesty. And that truth felt braver than anything a contract or plan could offer. The day stretched before them, golden and full of possibility, and Emma knew that this summer, which had begun as a temporary visit, had become a turning point. A place where she could rediscover herself, her heart, and what mattered most beyond practicality. Jack turned to her then, finally breaking the silence with a gentle remark about how some things could not be measured or sold. That life was richer when it was shared, and Emma nodded, understanding exactly what he meant, feeling that the decision to stay even temporarily was not just about the land, but about trusting the heart to guide the way. They moved together slowly toward the house, their steps quiet but sure, carrying with them a new understanding that some choices required courage, not just in words but in feeling. And Emma felt the weight of fear lift slightly, replaced with anticipation, because for the first time in years she had chosen herself as much as she had chosen the ranch. By the time they reached the porch, the sky was painted in soft hues, and Emma looked at Jack with a mixture of gratitude and hope, knowing that while nothing was promised beyond this moment, the decision to stay had already begun a story she had longed for without realizing it, a story where honesty, connection, and the willingness to feel could matter more than certainty. The ranch, the land, and the man who had become part of her world were no longer obstacles or temporary steps. They were reminders that life could offer second chances, quiet joy, and the chance to belong. And as Emma settled into the rhythm of the day, she understood that the heart often knew what it wanted before the mind could decide. And acting on that knowledge was sometimes the bravest thing a person could do, because it opened doors to hope, love, and a life worth living, exactly where one was meant to be.